University officials say the announcement that there would be a news conference at the university sparked speculation all over the state. They say they were flooded with calls asking if the school was going to merge with some other college or fire some top official. But today, University President Ralph Adams laid the mystery to rest.
And I'm glad to announce the creation of the Alabama Educational Hall of Fame, and glad to tell you that it will be located here on this campus.
The Hall of Fame is intended to be a place to honor the work of principals, superintendents, and school board members. Organizers say it will also be a shot in the arm for education.
I know our board of directors, in passing the resolution in support of this, felt that it was one of the finest things that could have come about to help put education out front in the state of Alabama.
We have done, as a whole, an outstanding job of keeping the schools in this state on an even keel during times of unprecedented social and economic change.
In making the announcement, school officials say they hope the Hall of Fame will get public support and attention, at least as much attention as the announcement itself received. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News at Troy State University.
That could honor these leaders. They immediately made contact with Dr. Jim Street, who is the executive secretary, Mr. Bill Buchanan, who's director of public relations for the university.
Who is here, and also some people who played
State lower than that is Georgia with something like 2.4%. If there is a group that has, as a whole, less proper recognition than school board members, I don't know who they are. They don't do what they do for any monetary gain, and to be honest with you, I don't know why they do what they do. I'm glad they do. But the role of representing the public in making decisions that affect the public schools is a noble calling. We have dedicated leaders throughout this state, from north to south, from east to west, that we think now will have an opportunity to receive the recognition that they are due.
The two-day search and destroy mission is part of a federal state marijuana eradication program that's had drug agents jumping all summer. This operation was centered in Cherokee and Jackson counties of North Alabama and was a combined effort of federal agents and officers of the Alabama Troopers, Georgia Patrol, and a host of county and city officers. Helicopters were used to spot the marijuana from the air. After the illegal weed was spotted, ground crews were directed to the areas to harvest the crop. Yesterday, officers had confiscated 1,827 plants with a total value of more than $900,000. There's no word yet on how much marijuana was found by officers today, but early reports indicate 11 more fields of pot were found by pilots, and officers are still in the woods cutting the crop. No decision's been made at this time about the search continuing tomorrow. Mac Carmack, WSFA TV News.
Go ahead.
In the new budget, all city employees will get a 4% pay raise. Many will get step raises, and police officers and firefighters will get a $300 a year increase in hazardous duty pay. This is the most Mayor Falmer thought the city could afford. Councilman Donald Watkins wanted to put in another $300 increase in hazardous duty pay for the police and fire departments. To do this, he tried to trim more than $200,000 out of other departments.
We'll take 721,000 and reduce that by $1,000.
But you caused me to have to speak against what I am basically for, and that's an increase in police and fire salaries. But to start trying to change these things right here and cut services that are needed, or cuts things out that are going to have to be put back in at mid-year, and again, use up the seed corn, so to speak, of next year's budget is wrong.
And people always label other persons on the council as a foe of this department or a foe of that department, but I'm willing to propose this to the council as a step towards unity in not only solving divisions within our community, but also solving what I perceive to be our need to reach a particular goal in getting good votes and keeping good votes.
But the mayor didn't see it that way. He said Councilman Watkins was trying to box him into a corner and cut into vital city services. In the end, Mr. Watkins couldn't get enough votes for his proposal, and the mayor's budget went through council virtually intact. Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
The oppressive summer heat has brought disaster to much of the nation's corn crop, with reports of as much as 75% loss. Other crops have also been hurt, as well as livestock and poultry. Even though Alabama farmers may not be in as bad a shape, they are hurting enough for Governor Wallace to send an aide to discuss the matter with federal officials.
If you'll fly over the state and look at the stands that you see of soybeans and of cotton and of peanuts and corn and cotton, you will see that in many places the drought has almost ruined 3/4 of the crop of certain products. On the other hand, there's some poor stands in all those fields of agriculture, and flying over looking at them. As one who's lived on a farm, knows about the farm, I can tell about stands. They're sort of spotty over the state.
State Agriculture Commissioner Albert McDonald will also attend the Friday meeting with U.S. Secretary of Agriculture John Block. Commissioner McDonald has already asked the federal government for help in the form of breaks on existing emergency farm loans and for low-cost emergency feed for livestock. In the meantime, a special emergency disaster committee is laying the groundwork for a disaster declaration request for Alabama to President Reagan. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
Now you can.
I'm glad you're older than I was. There's some of it probably taller than that. Donald's got one. Go ahead.
And it's very unfortunate that our federal government would impose such an unfair tax on a bunch of producers that did not create this problem of oversupply of milk. In the Southeast, we've reduced our supply by 23% in the last 10 years. We're a deficit state. In the state of Alabama, we only supply about a half of our fluid milk need. And this is a most unfair tax that our federal government would impose on the dairy producers of this state.
I think it's something that's despicable. We ought to take every action to decry it. The United Nations ought to fully get involved in this thing, and it certainly ought to be denounced in every aspect. If it is a situation as to whether or not it could be construed as in effect an act of war against the United States, that's something different. But that remains to be proven.
I don't see it as an act of war against the United States, no, but the fact that a United States congressman was on that plane certainly has a psychological effect, I think, with American people.
They tracked this commercial airliner, 747, for over 2 hours. They had a squadron of fighters that tracked it, they hunted it down just like you would a mad dog. They shot it down. There's nothing but cold-blooded, deliberate murder of 269 people. We have a case
Speaking to another Montgomery Civic Club this afternoon, Commissioner Smith called Mr. Graddick's statements political rhetoric.
I think he needs to make his mind up as to whether he wants to be the Attorney General or the Corrections Administrator.
What Mr. Smith says he's really concerned about is a, quote, crisis in corrections.
Even with the program that the Attorney General is trying to shut down, even with that program going full blast, today, right while I speak, we're one institution short. I've got 635 inmates with no beds, no place to put them.
Mr. Smith says the prison system needs another $28 million by October just to keep operating. In addition, he says a backlog of state prison inmates is again starting to grow in county jails. The commissioner says the state must now do one of three things. 1, reduce the number of inmates coming into the system. Or 2, build more prisons to hold the growing inmate population. Or 3, let some inmates out early. The commissioner has been meeting with Governor Wallace about the problem and indicates it's possible there will be a special session of the legislature to deal with it. He says Mr. Graddick's complaints can only make the other problems worse.
Bottom line is, if Charlie wins in his lawsuit, you, the taxpayers, lose.
On top of all this, there were several distinct differences between Mr. Graddick's set of facts and Mr. Smith's set of facts, enough to make one man ask, how can anyone know who's telling the truth? Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News. With Alabama's prisons in what he calls a crisis, Commissioner Smith fired a few shots of his own at Mr. Graddick.
Not one time did Charlie Graddick try to help get any money to build these prisons.
Mr. Smith says Mr. Graddick's complaints are nothing but political rhetoric, causing more problems for what he says is a badly troubled prison system.
Even with the program that the Attorney General is trying to shut down, even with that program going full blast, today, right while I speak, we're one institution short. I've got 635 inmates with no beds, no place to put them.
The commissioner says the prison system's financial problems are bad enough that there could be a special legislative session to deal with them. Bad enough to make Mr. Smith talk about putting inmates to work building new prisons for themselves. The commissioner says with the number of inmates the prisons are now holding and the growing number coming into the system, there's no question that more prisons will have to be built. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
Decided today to announce my candidate that you know could do the job. Get them coins under the table at 865 Hill Street, which have been there for the last 4 years, 1983. I have duly qualified.
More than 1,000 people braved threatening skies to attend a large outdoor birthday party for the State Department of Agriculture and Industries. Partygoers viewed agricultural exhibits and were treated to a taste of some farm-produced commodities. State and federal agricultural officials, led by Governor Wallace, unveiled a monument commemorating the department's 100th anniversary as a state agency. But the summer drought is still on the minds of many, including the Assistant Secretary of Agriculture, Wilmer D. Mizell, who says the drought may actually help the administration achieve its goal of reducing the farm commodity surplus. But Mr. Mizell says the U.S. Agriculture Department wants to help U.S. farmers combat the effects of the drought. And to do that, Agriculture Secretary John Block has set up a Friday meeting in Chicago.
The Secretary really wanted the forum so that he'd be able to assess the tremendous impact of this drought on American agriculture. And from that meeting, at this point, we're not real sure of all the help that would be available.
The celebration ended with a massive barbecue chicken dinner for about 1,800. With the devastating effect the heat has had on poultry production, this barbecue may be the cheapest these folks eat for a while. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
It's very unfortunate that our federal government would impose such an unfair tax on a bunch of producers that did not create this problem of oversupply of milk. In the Southeast, we've reduced our supply by 23% in the last 10 years. We're a deficit state. In the state of Alabama, we only supply about a half of our fluid milk need. And this is a most unfair tax that our federal government would impose on the dairy producers of this state.
It was a slick talking, fast sell operation to the public. In my judgment, it was a real snow job.
And that's what the Attorney General thinks about SIR. The program was designed by Prison Commissioner Fred Smith to release inmates nearing the end of their sentences out into the community to work and make restitution to their victims and society. Mr. Graddick says there's no law that provides for such a program. He says Commissioner Smith designed it in an attempt to alleviate overcrowding in state and county jails and to get the federal courts off his back. Mr. Graddick says of the 577 inmates in the program, 87% are burglars and thieves, and only 43 of the 577 have actually made cash payments to victims.
They call it SIR. It's a nice sounding word for a lousy program.
Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Supervised. Nobody being supervised out there, but they'll try to make you think they're being supervised. They'll tell you that they have one supervisor for every 18 people they put on the...
That program is supervised intensive restitution, something Mr. Graddick claims the commissioner created to alleviate overcrowding in state and county jails. These men are part of the group of 577 inmates living and working on the outside. The program was designed so that these inmates can make restitution to their victims and to society. Mr. Graddick says of the 577, only 43 have actually made cash payments. He also claims that 87% of the parolees are burglars and thieves. And Mr. Graddick says the program is illegal and that Mr. Smith is usurping the power of the Pardons and Paroles Board as well as judges.
If you're convicted of theft, then if the law is how he interprets it, then they ought to just send him to jail and let Commissioner Smith determine how long he stays there. Because under the present situation, that's about what's happening now.
Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
They got out of the business of road gangs because they had several inmates, whoever the governor was back.
During Wednesday night, the United States State Department officials, particularly Assistant Secretary Burt, were in contact with Soviet officials seeking information concerning the airliner's fate. The Soviets offered no information. As soon as U.S. sources had confirmed the shooting down of the aircraft, the U.S., on its own behalf and on behalf of the Republic of Korea, called in the Soviet chargé d'affaires in Washington this morning to express our grave concern over the shooting down of an unarmed civilian plane carrying passengers of a number of nationalities. We also urgently demanded an explanation from the Soviet Union. The United States reacts with revulsion to this attack. Loss of life appears to be heavy. We can see no excuse whatsoever for this appalling act.
But you know, we've had a history. We played pretty good down in Jackson, and I'm looking forward to it. And these kids are really souped up, and most of these kids who have played there, we have played better in Jackson than we played in Crampton Bowl. I don't know what the reason for it, but I believe that we're going to have a better game, and I think we can win the game, and we can win it big if we play like we've been practicing, because we didn't have good attitude. We've been moving the ball, and everybody excited about the whole the patterns we're running and the scheme we're using. So I'm just looking forward to it.
Draw play up the middle. He's coming. Touchdown!
And I hope to get talked with other commissioners within the country and you know, come with a unified plan of action. Other states are in the same problem we're in, and he's not going to help Alabama and not help other states.
Everybody knows what the weather conditions are. What we want to do is impress on somebody that we better start paying attention to the farmers if this country is going to survive. If we can afford to bail out Chrysler, we can send billions of dollars to Poland and try to rescue Mexico, we better start paying attention to the farmers, because if we lose them, we've lost all we've got, our best defensive weapon in this nation.
Good, sir. How you doing, sir? Yes, sir. Good to see you. Good to see you, sir. Come in, fellas. Hi.
Good, how you doing?
They gonna leave. Yes, they're gonna leave.
I do too.
Yes, sir, gentlemen. Good to see you all.
Good to see you, Governor.
Good to see you again. Well, of course, my reaction is about the same as stated by the President and members of the Congress. It was an atrocious action which does not surprise me, because anyone who studied and read the history of the Communist Manifesto and Des Capital and the writings of Lenin and Marx know that these tactics are advocated in their eventual desire to be all-powerful in the world, and I'm not surprised at all.
What are you doing this for?
Because I'm an American citizen and I'm outraged at what Russia's done.
You think this will accomplish anything?
Maybe not, but it'll let everybody know how most of us feel.
They could close down our embassy, bring home our people, close down the Russian embassy, send the Russian embassy people home, call off the arms control meeting next week in Madrid. All the free world countries could say to the Russian Airlines Aeroflot, you cannot land in the free world space. Land, get out.
We believe this action should be considered cold-blooded murder, and we urge President Reagan to do the following. 1, immediately declare all Soviet personnel non grata and shut down Soviet embassy. 2, recall our personnel from the Soviet Union and cut off diplomatic ties. 3, stop all trade with the Soviet Union.
In the state capital in Montgomery. This needs to be done all across the United States to demonstrate to the administration that the people are upset about what the Soviet Union has done, is doing, and will continue to do if we don't do something in a positive way. The fact that the...
Where does most of your, aside from you turn out the United Way money, where does most of your money come from?
We are functioning with the $10,000 we received from the Continentals 3 and each Saturday thereafter. When making contributions to support sickle cell, members of the general public need to be aware of which of the 2 organizations they are supporting. There are 2 organizations, namely the Continentals and the Furious 5, currently raising funds to support the foundation, and we wish to negate the confusion and identify the foundation as the organization to support. We are accountable to anyone and everyone that supports us in helping to ease the pain and suffering of those persons afflicted with sickle cell disease.
The advisory audit cites the association for keeping inadequate financial records, for making loans to employees, and for inadequately explaining telephone and travel expenses. In addition, the report says association checks were made out to cash with no explanation, and the executive director's son works for the agency apparently in conflict with the state nepotism laws. The report also lists many problems with the workings of the association's controlling board. Governor's staff member Hezekiah Wagstaff was on the board and is still trying to help the association.
Let me just say that from the board standpoint, we do recognize that we have a serious problem. We are moving as swiftly as possible to try and address those problems.
All of this today prompted another group, the Sickle Cell Foundation of Greater Montgomery, to hold a news conference to make sure people know there are two separate sickle cell groups in the area.
When making contributions to support sickle cell, members of the general public need to be aware of which of the two organizations they are supporting.
Meanwhile, with next year's appropriation of $62,500 in the balance, association leaders will say only that they're working on the problems. In summary, the state report says the association presently does not appear to be serving the needs for which it was founded due to several problems. Among them, the lack of an effective, active board, the lack of definite policies and procedures, inefficient management and administration, and the lack of proper planning, programming, and budgeting. State officials suggest all of this has placed the association's funding in serious jeopardy. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News. The report from the state auditor's office says the association has shown inefficient management of state funds and lists many examples. Among them, the report says association checks were written to cash with no explanation. Loans were made to employees. And the report says the executive director's son is currently working for the agency, apparently a violation of nepotism laws. All this has prompted another group, the Sickle Cell Foundation of Greater Montgomery, to make sure people know there are two separate sickle cell groups.
We really want to clear up the confusion in the community. And that's, I think, is the main point of the press conference.
Officials say the foundation, which runs entirely on donations, has been hurt by the questions surrounding the other sickle cell group. But Governor's staff member Hezekiah Wagstaff, who has worked with the association, says it's trying to work out its problems.
Let me just say that from the board standpoint, we do recognize that we have a serious problem. We are moving as swiftly as possible to try and address those problems.
Ironically, the report lists one of the agency's problems as underfunding, just when state support is in danger of being taken away. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
This transparent plastic jug has been the familiar gallon container for Barber's milk for 20 years, but the company is replacing it with this opaque white plastic container. The first of the new jugs rolled off the assembly lines at the local distributorship this morning. They hit the shelves across the state tomorrow. The reason for the new containers? Well, officials say studies have shown that prolonged exposure to light takes away vitamins in milk and affects the way it tastes, and the old plastic gallon containers emitted too much light.
The new white opaque plastic container, which has been approved by U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Federal Food and Drug Administration, is a way to protect the product, the freshness and the flavor from the sunlight and for any other light rays.
Mr. Grant says Barber Dairies is one of the first companies in the country to utilize the new containers, and he says while consumers won't notice a price change because of the new jugs, they should notice a taste change.
If you have a very sensitive taste, you're going to notice a difference. We think you will.
Improvement.
An improvement, yes.
Lois Russell, WSFA TV News.
This is Duke, not your average household pet. But believe it or not, Duke is better trained than the average pooch. Duke is a recent graduate of the Dog Training Center at Lackland Air Force Base, which trains dogs for all branches of the service. Like all the dogs in the K-9 unit at Maxwell Air Force Base, Duke receives standard patrol dog training. But Duke also has a nose that can sniff out explosives.
He's our bomb dog. If we receive bomb threats on base, we'll respond with the dog to clear the buildings or the areas. And for humanitarian reasons, we'll take the dog off base also for the local civil authorities.
Duke isn't the only one with a sensitive nose. Wolf here is an expert in sniffing out drugs.
Okay, Wolf is what we call an aggressive response drug dog. We train the dogs, they're conditioned to certain things. Okay, when Wolf finds the narcotics or the scent, he's given that reward of the ball. So Wolf knows when he finds the scent or the narcotic, he gets to play with his ball.
Sergeant DeWitt says control is what they look for in their dogs, and they must be able to respond immediately to trainers' commands and react without commands. At one time, a dog like Duke would end his career when his trainer left the service, but through better training techniques, the dogs can serve several trainers.
When the handler goes to another duty location, the dog goes through a training period and is retrained for that individual.
But while assigned to one base, the trainer and the dog work as a team, and if the trainer gets sick, his canine is also put on sick leave. Don Phelps on the military beat.
One of the things that all of you know is that
these crops for a living. Over the years, and the heat combined in Missouri and looked at fields there. That I have directed the farming.
For the past 2 years, Troy State has failed to post a winning season. That hasn't happened to the Trojans since the mid-'60s. Consequently, Coach Charlie Bradshaw is gone, and former Troy assistant Chan Gailey has been brought in to turn things around. Do you feel you're under pressure now, your first year at Troy?
Rick, I don't think you're ever under any more pressure than you put on yourself. And we don't feel like we're in a pressure situation, nor are we trying to create a pressure situation. These guys are working hard. They're doing a great job. We have a long way to go execution-wise, and we're going to take it as it comes.
With that out of the way, Gailey now looks forward to getting the season underway. He says preparations have gone well. His biggest concern involves the uncertainty of a brand new wishbone offense.
I hope we're far enough along to be able to go out there and execute without the turnovers, without the mistakes. But like I said, we'll just have to see that this Saturday.
Gailey is also concerned about tomorrow's opponent, Tuskegee.
I know they have a lot of great athletes, Rick. Defensively, all three linebackers are back. They can run, they're big. They replace some down people. So I don't see much change scheme-wise from them because they did such a good job with those linebackers last year.
You're excited about coming to Montgomery for the season opener?
Oh, you bet I am. I think it's great for both schools, Rick. We end up there in front of a crowd that has ties to both schools, and I think it ought to be good for the area and good for both schools.
Tonight at 10, a look at the Golden Tigers. Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports in Troy.
After last year's 6-4 season, there was plenty of reason for optimism here at Tuskegee Institute. But since that time, Coach Lonzo Bully has experienced nothing but problems in his third year as head man with the Golden Tigers.
Sit, hit, hit.
The problems began for Bully last spring when 12 players were kicked off the squad for disciplinary reasons, involving a morals charge. How has that affected your program?
Well, a great deal. I think it's set our program back about 4 years now with the loss of 7 starters through some disciplinary problem, and then we lost 8 starters through graduation. In a small school like we have, you just can't replace them overnight. So right now, we're just working with the best thing that we have, and those are young people.
When evaluating this team, Bully begins with his defense.
Well, right now, the best thing we have going for is our linebackers. They're the only veterans that we have coming back. We have 2 returning starters, and we have 3 other kids that played a lot last year. So that would be the nucleus of our whole ball club. And if they play well, I think we can do a lot because we have the philosophy that our defense can keep us in the game and we can eventually score.
Playing Troy State is a new experience for the Tigers, but that's not what concerns the coach the most.
The problem is that they have a new coach and they come in with a new system, which is the wishbone. And we haven't played a wishbone team here since 1979. So it's very unusual to see a wishbone team, and to start the season off is going to be very rough.
Are you excited about playing in Montgomery Saturday?
Oh, I love to play in Montgomery. I love playing in Crampton Bowl, and it's been good to me. So I hope this Saturday that it'll be good to me also.
Troy State versus Tuskegee in the first ever Pepsi Challenge Bowl. Kickoff from Crampton Bowl 1:30 tomorrow afternoon. Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports in Tuskegee.
Get that girl. Come on.
That's just part of the job. It's working on holidays. I've been with the state for a long time, and I've worked so many holidays. It's just second nature, I guess, to work when it comes time for you to work. You just go and don't worry about it.
Although to Sergeant Bryant, working holidays has become second nature, one facet of his job has never gotten easier, notifying the family of a fatality victim.
Well, that's probably the hardest part about this job, is notifying someone that their next of kin has been killed in a wreck. We try to get a minister. We have a chaplain with each highway patrol district throughout the state. We try to get them to go with us. If we cannot get them, then we try to have at least 2 officers there, but you know, they know that something's wrong when you arrive on the scene and they see that uniform there in the middle of the night.
Corporal Gravely says most fatalities occur at night and on weekends or holidays. A third of the people who die on Alabama roads are between the ages of 14 and 22. Corporal Gravely says because they are both the inexperienced drivers and the inexperienced drinkers. But lives can be saved if people would just follow one safety rule.
Well, if they would buckle a seatbelt, as you notice this seatbelt around me now, riding down the road, if they'd just buckle that seatbelt. So far, there have only been 4 people that have been buckled in this year. The rest of the people who have been killed have not had a seatbelt on.
Troopers have only taken seatbelts off 4 people out of the 378 who have died on Alabama highways this year. Lisa Walsh, WSFA TV News.
National Black Dollar Days, as the NAACP calls its latest program, was kicked off late this week in an effort to demonstrate just how much money the black community contributes to the economy.
Oh, you've got the $2 bills, huh?
$2 bills and Susan B. Anthony dollars, the symbols of this program. What NAACP leaders have asked all black people to use for all purchases through Labor Day.
The purpose was to make the black community as well as the merchants aware of the black spending power. And I think this has been tremendously effective in making black consumers aware of how important they are as consumers.
Black leaders say the program has been given strong support in some places, particularly one local supermarket chain, where they were giving away $2 bills to people who could show they already had some.
We get a lot of support in the black community, and we try to work with anybody who shop in the superfood store. We try to treat them as we do in other organizations.
But while the number of $2 bills here was not as high as expected, it was even lower elsewhere. At a local mall, which was to have been boycotted until that boycott was called off, many merchants said they had seen no $2 bills or Susan B. Anthony dollars. It was the same at another mall. Still, black leaders are not discouraged by this. They say even if the Black Dollar Days only partially demonstrate black buying strength, it will help the black community. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
Oh, really good. Just a short time ago, we had all the phones were busy, and some people were waiting to for one of them to get free. We really expect to be busy all weekend long. We're going to be out here today and Sunday and Monday, and we anticipate having a quite successful project here.
Not the kind of crowd the sponsors were hoping for at Crampton Bowl, but those in attendance saw some good hard-hitting football. First quarter, Tuskegee on the march, Marshall Watley over the middle to Lewis Donnell. The ball pops loose on impact. Todd Hutsko recovers at the Troy 10, stopping a Golden Tiger threat. But on the next possession, Watley finds the magic. Off the rollout, he spots Dale Holmes open way downfield. It connects for a 42-yard touchdown. The point after failed, 6-0 Tuskegee. Troy State mounted a drive late in the first quarter, but the Tigers stopped the Trojans on 2 consecutive tries inside the 2. This one on 4th and goal turned the ball over. Second quarter now, Tuskegee deep in their own territory. Watley throwing out of his own end zone right into the arms of linebacker Thomas Clark. He'll ramble it 20 yards untouched into the end zone with the extra point, 7-6 Troy State. They led it 10-6 at halftime. The third quarter had a disastrous beginning for Tuskegee. The punt snap from center rolls between Rodney Brown's legs. As he's hit, the ball rolls into the end zone. Jeff Sowell recovers for the TSU touchdown. After a short Tuskegee punt, Greg Walls gets the call on this misdirection play. He rambles all the way down to the 1. The Trojans scored on the next play to make it 24-6. Later in the third, J.R. McKinnon connects with a wide-open Lee Hollingsworth for another score, and it was obvious the day belonged to Troy State. The Trojans win the first ever Pepsi Challenge Bowl, 33-6 over outman Tuskegee.
Well, what I have on mine is a better living, and food is a better economic on prices. They come down a little more.
Job, it's sort of hard to come by. You thumping now?
Rain. I have rain on my mind.
Why is that?
Because we need rain here. We need rain on our farms. We just need rain here in this area.
What about brakes?
Breed, I just don't know what's wrong with them myself. They need some pictures. Bad. And they're not hidden. They are not hidden. Chambers not hidden. And what's that other boy? Washington, he's not hidden. Just a few of the bottom players is hidden. But they'll come out. They'll come on later. They're going to get some more pictures, I hope.
I think they start winning again if they get the TV back up. Get some more fans out there.
Well, I'm still rooting for them, and I hope they're going to come along real well.
Baseball, I don't care nothing about it. Not unless my little boys play.
Well, yeah, I'm kind of a fanatic. My wife, she loves them better than I do. And they losing, and we just can't stand it. I want them to be in the World Series. Crazy about them Braves.
Okay. Thank you.
Except for the baby might have a head injury.
The light-colored car was going northbound, and he had car problems, and he was trying to pull off the shoulder road. And the other vehicle coming up behind him didn't see him in time, and that's what caused the rear-end collision.
The meeting with Secretary Block and representatives of many other states hurt by the drought did not yield any ready solutions. But Commissioner McDonald says it did offer hope. Alabama's farmers, like many in the country, have had a difficult year. Early on, there was too much rain and it was too cold to plant. Now, there is generally not enough rain. State officials have asked the federal government to declare 49 counties disaster areas. That would make farmers in those counties eligible for low-interest loans to try to bail out their operations. But while a ruling on that may still be 3 to 4 weeks away, Mr. McDonald says the meeting with the Secretary did present other possibilities for help, like letting farmers harvest hay off land set aside for the government's payment-in-kind program. He says technically those crops belong to the government, but if the okay to harvest is granted, it could help beef producers offset feed shortages brought on by the bad crops. In the same line, Mr. McDonald says there is now also the possibility of some sort of cost assistance program to help those same farmers buy grain. Assessing the full impact of this year's crop failures will take time. But Mr. McDonald does not hesitate to say this is the worst drought he's seen in almost 30 years. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
Well, the lack of water and was the biggest thing that we had. Our truck carries 500 gallons on the pumper, but due to the amount of the fire that we had, we could do nothing with the fire, and all we could do was try to protect the garage that was close to the house. And the time that it took for us to get down here, it took 13 minutes for our first pumper to arrive. And, we don't know how long before the fire was discovered, so we're probably looking at maybe 30 minutes before we got down here from the time the fire started.
The Prattville City Council will decide Tuesday whether to rezone Durden Heights subdivision and allow more trailers to be moved into the neighborhood. Many residents here are opposed to additional trailers and are arming themselves with petitions for Tuesday's council meeting. They say trailer residents don't make good neighbors.
Here I've got 5 children. I don't want a bunch of trailer parks up here to worry about what's going to happen to my children. People moving in and out. And you don't have that problem with homeowners like you do people moving in and out.
48 people have signed the petition so far, saying the trailers devalue their property and are causing sewer problems.
That 10 trailers next door to me, they have septic tanks that runs over and they won't do anything about it, and they don't do any good to call anyone. I don't care who lives next door to me in a 10 or trailer. I'm not cutting up about that. I just want them to clean up some of this mess around me.
But the people who want the neighborhood rezoned say the trailers are already here because of a previous zoning law, and they don't see any problem with a few more.
There seems to be trailers on every street, and in front of me, and behind me, and on the side of me, and I think around 18 trailers up here, and plus a trailer park. And I don't understand why that I can't put a trailer on my lot when everybody else has got one on their lot.
Council will meet Tuesday at 1:30 in the afternoon to vote on the rezoning. Lisa Walsh, WSFA TV News, Prattville.
We pick up play in the 4th. Pirates leading 1-0. Claudel Washington on second, and Dale Murphy connects on this pitch by Jose De Leon. Murph gives it a ride over the right field fence. Braves take the lead 2-1. To the 6th now. Washington again on second. This time Murphy connects for a shot to deep left. It's just fair, hitting the foul pole screen. 28 homers for Murphy, 4-1 Atlanta. In the 7th, the Bucks get to Craig McMurtry. Runners second and third. Tony Pena lashes this single through the infield. Both runners score, and it's a 4-3 game. Gene Garber relieves McMurtry, and Johnny Ray loops this single to right. Pena and Lee Mazzilli score. Pittsburgh takes the lead 5-4. But the Braves strike back in the 8th. With Murphy on first, Chris Chambliss bombs one off Jim Bibby. It's off the wall in deep right. Murphy will score on the double to tie it at 5-all. Brett Butler came in to run for Chambliss, and Glenn Hubbard lays down this sacrifice bunt. Lee Mazzilli charges from first, but throws it way over the head of Johnny Ray, covering the bag. Butler scores the winning run. Braves snap their 6-game losing streak with a 6-5 win over Pittsburgh.
First quarter at Soldier Field, Falcon Steve Bartkowski threads the needle 11 yards to William Andrews. Touchdown, point after missed, 6-0 Falcons. Second quarter, Bears incomparable Walter Payton sweeps 20 yards right side, down to the Atlanta 9. From there, Jim McMahon hit Kenny Marjoram, who just barely hangs on long enough in the corner of the end zone. 7-6 Chicago. It was 10-6 Bears at the half. Third quarter, Gerald Riggs caps a drive, walking in from the 1. It's 13-10 Atlanta, as the point after was good. Then McMahon gave to rookie Anthony Hutchison for the touchdown. 17-13 Bears third quarter. But the Falcons retaliated in the fourth. Bartkowski picks on rookie cornerback Mike Richardson, hooking up with Alfred Jenkins for the touchdown as the Falcons go on to win it by a final of 20-17.
Sales, sales, and more sales. That seemed to be the rule today as stores across Montgomery kept their doors open to attract shoppers with some extra time on their hands. And as usual, Montgomeryans took the bait. For many, the morning bargain hunt was just a preamble to an afternoon of picnics and barbecues, like this one at the Greek Orthodox Church. The traditional barbecue attracted nearly 6,000 this year. Organizers say customers started coming in as early as 8 this morning, and by 2 this afternoon, cars were still rolling in. The Greek barbecue has been a Labor Day tradition for the past 35 years. It's one of 3 major fundraising efforts for the Greek Church, and officials say it's one of the most effective. But that's the business side, says one church member. The other side, she says, is just good eating. Oh, and by the way, of course, some politicians took advantage of today's activities to pass out a few cards, shake a few hands, and eat some good barbecue. Lois Russell, WSFA TV News.
If you know the man, you know that he means what he says. He's tough. He's going to have to go through the diplomatic way of doing it, but I anticipate there's going to be some very strong response. And I think if you go back to the Patco strike a couple of years ago, he told them what he's going to do, and he did it. And nobody believed he would do it. And so I think when it comes down to his announcing what this country's options are and what we're going to tolerate and what we're not going to tolerate and what it's going to cost the Soviets if they continue their aggressive actions, I think he's going to be, I think we'll all be pleased.
How tough do you think we can afford to be?
Well, you know, all the facts aren't in yet, and so it's sort of hard to make that decision. But I think I don't think we should interfere with the grain deal. We've signed the contract and it's done. And certainly we shouldn't interfere with the arms. I don't think we should interfere with the grain deal. We've signed the contract and it's done. And certainly we shouldn't interfere with the arms negotiation because that's in our interest as well as theirs. But as far as making it tough on international credit, where we put up money and the Russians borrow from it, and giving them breaks and export of technology to them, there are any number of ways that we can make it very, very unpleasant and uncomfortable for the Soviets without being belligerent and militaristic.
This was a tough rescue operation. The 2 men were pinned inside the cab of a log truck at the bottom of a deep ravine. Montgomery fire medics and volunteers from the Raymer community used every tool they had to cut the cab apart and bring out the surviving passenger, 34-year-old Louis McFoley. This took more than an hour.
The condition of the truck, he's very lucky he's alive.
The body of the driver, 40-year-old Robert Lee McFoley, was freed from the wreckage some hour and a half later. State troopers say the log truck went off the road and down the embankment after hitting a cattle trailer. Troopers say the trailer apparently came off of or came loose from a passing pickup truck.
And the 18-wheeler approaching from the opposite direction made contact with or collided into the trailer. It then went out of control and crossed the center line and ran off the road down into the woods.
Well, when I looked back, a big truck was leaving the road. And I run down there, nothing where I could talk to him. I couldn't see him or nothing. It was buried under logs, you know.
The younger McFoley brother was taken to St. Margaret's Hospital for treatment of multiple injuries. Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
First of all, it's a foot race. We're trying to raise money to help completion of a renovation which started with $50,000 that we got from the federal government.
What is the renovation for?
The renovation is for this, to turn this house into a museum. Not only a museum, also it would act as a community type center kind of thing for weddings and family reunions. Anything that'll take to upgrade the community.
I think Auburn, which is sort of the consensus, everybody feels like that Auburn will, and I think they will. They have the best football team, the best personnel. And I think Florida is the dark horse. Anybody could name 4 or 5 teams as dark horse. LSU could be. Certainly some could say Tennessee. Some could say Alabama. Some might even say Georgia. But I think Florida, because Florida is not only as good, but I think the problems or the shadows, the question marks that's been around Gainesville, Florida the last 6 months will be a motivating and rallying force for the Florida football team, somewhat like it was for the Clemson team 2 years ago when they won the national championship.